When the stranger rode into the ghost town valley that evening, the sun was bleeding out behind the mountains, and the wind carried nothing but dust and silence. The cowboy, Lucas Hale, had been chasing work for months. Every ranch he passed either closed or cursed. He had a broken saddle, a half-starved horse, and a heart heavier than his empty pockets. But as he turned the corner near the abandoned saloon, something made him stop. There, in the middle of the dirt road, sat a woman, barefoot, wrapped in a torn blanket, her hair tangled with dust and sunlight. She held a rough wooden sign that read in uneven letters, "One food equals one night." Lucas blinked, thinking it was a cruel joke. But she looked up, and her eyes, dark, trembling, wild, were not the eyes of someone pretending. They were pleading. He dismounted slowly, boots sinking into the sand, unsure if she was real. The woman's lips moved faintly. "You have food," she whispered, voice raw as gravel. Lucas hesitated. In his saddlebag lay only a small loaf of bread he'd been saving for the night. He could walk away, pretend he'd never seen her, but something in her voice rooted him to the spot. "Yeah," he said quietly. "I've got some." Before he could offer it, the sound of hooves echoed from the hills. 3 riders emerged, rough men with greedy faces and rifles slung over their shoulders. They looked at the woman, then at the sign, and burst into laughter. "Looks like we ain't the only ones found ourselves a bargain," one sneered. Lucas stepped forward instinctively, his hand resting on the grip of his revolver. "She's not yours to claim," he said coldly. The laughter stopped. The leader, a scarred brute, spat into the dirt. "Then who's she belong to, cowboy?" "You." Lucas didn't flinch. "Yeah, me." The men glared for a tense moment before spitting curses and riding off. Dust settled, and silence returned. The woman stared at him, eyes wide with disbelief. Why'd you do that?" she asked. Lucas shrugged, tossing her the loaf of bread. "'Cause I couldn't ride past someone who's already lost everything." She caught it clumsily, clutching it like treasure. Tears mixed with dirt on her cheeks as she took a bite, trembling with hunger. Watching her, Lucas felt a strange ache rise in his chest, something like anger at the world, and pity all at once. When she'd eaten, she wiped her mouth and looked at him, voice trembling. "You know what my sign means, don't you?" Lucas nodded slowly. "I do." The woman lowered her head, shame flickering in her expression. "I didn't want to write it," she said, voice cracking. "But nobody helps without a price anymore." Lucas said nothing. He just stared at the horizon, where the sun had finally disappeared, leaving only violet light. "I ain't asking for a price," he said finally. "I just couldn't leave you here." She looked at him again, really looked, and for a second, her eyes softened. "Then why claim me?" she whispered. Lucas didn't have an answer yet, but the words he spoke felt truer than anything he'd said in years. Because no one else should. They walked together toward his camp as night fell. The stars came alive above the desert, bright and sharp. She walked beside his horse, barefoot and silent, her sign tucked under her arm. He didn't ask her name, she didn't ask his. But something fragile and wordless began to form between them in that cold, lonely night, something neither of them quite understood. The fire cracked softly, throwing light across the woman's face. She sat wrapped in his blanket, staring into the flames. Her name, she finally told him, was Mara. Once, she'd lived on a ranch farther west, but after the drought came and the cattle died, her husband sold the land and left, taking everything but the debts. The landowners came, next, then the storms, and soon she had nothing but the clothes she wore and the signs she carved with shaking hands. Lucas listened in silence. Her voice wasn't sad, it was empty, like she'd used up every tear long ago. When she finished, he poked the fire with a stick and said, "You don't owe me nothing, Mara." She looked up sharply, eyes glinting. "That's not how the world works anymore," she said bitterly. "You give, you take. I can't live on charity." Lucas smiled faintly, though there was no joy in it. Maybe the world's wrong, then. For the first time, she almost smiled too. But then, her gaze dropped. "You don't know what you've done, cowboy," she murmured. "Those men who rode away, they'll be back. They think I'm theirs now. They always come back." Lucas leaned back against his saddle. "Let 'em," he said simply. "I've dealt with worse." His calm tone puzzled her. He didn't boast, didn't threaten, he just said it like a fact. Still, her worry didn't fade. "You can't fight them all," she whispered. "You don't even know me." He looked at her, eyes steady. "Don't need to. You're a person, not a prize." That silenced her. For the first time in months, Someone had spoken to her as if she still mattered. She turned her face away, afraid he'd see the tears threatening to fall. When the night deepened, Mara lay down near the fire, still clutching the blanket he'd given her. Lucas stayed awake, watching the flames dance. He wasn't sure what made him stay, pity, maybe, or something deeper. He remembered his own loss, the home he'd lost to the same drought, the woman who'd left him behind. Maybe saving Mara wasn't about her at all. Maybe it was about saving what was left of himself. But at dawn, his peace shattered. Hooves thundered again across the valley. Lucas rose before she did, hand on his gun. The same 3 riders appeared, their faces meaner than before. Told you, Cowboy, the scarred leader snarled, she don't belong to you. Lucas stepped forward, she don't belong to anyone. The men drew their guns. For a heartbeat, the air went still, then exploded in smoke and fire. When the dust cleared, 2 men lay in the dirt. The third fled, his horse screaming into the hills. Lucas stood motionless, revolver still smoking. Mara stared at him, horror and awe mixed in her eyes. You killed for me, she whispered. Lucas holstered his gun and sighed. No, I killed for peace. He turned away, not seeing the tears she wiped away with shaking hands. They buried the men before sunrise. The wind carried the smell of gunpowder and sage. Mara stood beside him silently as he covered the last grave. They won't be the last, she said quietly. Word will spread. Lucas nodded. Then let it. Maybe the world needs to hear that not every hungry soul can be owned. She looked at him strangely, her voice trembling. Why do you care so much? He paused, meeting her gaze. Because once, someone cared for me when I didn't think I deserved it. And I never paid that debt back. Days turned into weeks. They stayed on the edge of the valley, building a small shelter near the river. Lucas taught her to ride, to hunt, to aim a rifle. Mara taught him how to read the signs of the weather, how to plant seeds where the ground still breathed. Slowly, life returned to their eyes. The old sign she once held became firewood one night, burned to ashes under a wide, forgiving sky. But even as laughter returned, the past lingered like a shadow. Sometimes, Mara woke screaming, dreams of being hunted, of hands pulling her away. Lucas would wake too, sitting quietly beside her until the tremors passed. She'd look at him, the firelight catching her tears, and whisper, "Why didn't you leave me?" And every time, he'd answer the same, because someone had to prove kindness still means something. One evening, as the sky flamed orange over the hills, Mara stood watching him fix the fence. You claimed me, she said softly, almost smiling. But not the way they wanted. Lucas looked up, his face tired but gentle. No, he said, I claimed you for your freedom. She nodded, stepping closer, her voice a whisper carried by the wind. Then I'll never leave the man who gave it back. Years later, travelers passing through the valley spoke of a strange pair who lived by the river, a quiet cowboy and a woman with eyes like storms. They said no one dared trouble them, that the land itself seemed to guard their home. And when the wind blew over the old road, some swore they still saw the faint trace of a sign carved in wood, half buried in the dust, the letters barely visible, one food equals one night. Only now, it no longer meant desperation, it meant the night someone finally found mercy in a merciless world. A lone cowboy rides into a desolate, sun-baked western ghost town at sunset. In the middle of the dirt road sits a barefoot woman, wrapped in a torn blanket, holding a hand-painted wooden sign that reads, "One food equals one night." Her hair is tangled by wind and her face covered in dust and exhaustion. The cowboy stands beside his tired horse, shadows long, light gold and orange, atmosphere tense and cinematic, old saloon ruins and tumbleweed in the background. 3 rough outlaws on horseback confront the cowboy and the starving woman in the empty street. The leader with a scar sneers while gripping his rifle, dust swirling around their boots. The cowboy stands between the woman and the men, hand resting on his revolver, hat brim low over his eyes. The setting sun burns red behind them, creating a high-stakes standoff mood, dramatic lighting, swirling dust, desperation and defiance in the air. At night beside a small campfire in the open desert, the woman sits wrapped in the cowboy's blanket, light flickering on her tear-streaked face as she tells her story. The cowboy listens silently, shadows playing across his rugged features. Behind them, the vast sky is full of stars and the desert stretches endlessly. The scene feels intimate, lonely, and full of fragile warmth, orange firelight, soft glow, emotional storytelling mood. In early dawn light, a tense western shootout unfolds. The cowboy stands in the open, revolver drawn, smoke curling from the barrel. Two outlaws lie fallen in the dust, while one flees on horseback toward the hills. The woman stands behind him, clutching the blanket, her eyes wide in shock and awe. The sky glows pale gold, sand kicked up around them, dramatic western tension, cinematic realism, rising sun casting long shadows. Years later, a peaceful western riverside cabin bathed in warm evening light. The cowboy and the woman stand together by a small fire where the old wooden sign, "One food equals one night," burns to ashes. Wildflowers and tall grass sway around them, their horses graze nearby. The sky is painted orange and purple, and their faces are calm, touched by hard-earned peace. The atmosphere is nostalgic, romantic, and symbolic of redemption and freedom.